So for example, right now I'm walking and I see on the floor that there are some tiles. Okay, so, and I also see that there's a cord right there, so I'm going to be really careful and use good spatial judgment to not trip over that cord. Okay, someone who's experiencing changes in cognition may not be able to judge the distance between how far that cord is and where they're at. Or go to sit down in a chair and completely miss the chair. Okay, anybody ever read the book Still Alice? Okay, there's a great, in one of the chapters, there's a story. This lady is a PhD at Harvard University, teaches classes, amazing person, neuropsychologist, and she's diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's disease. And when she walks into her house one day, there's a throw rug on the floor in the front of her house. Well, that change in contrast when she came through the door was really hard for her to judge, and she thought it was a hole. So she was stuck outside of her door, unable to go over the rug. Okay. So when I worked in long-term care, that was one of the things that we did. We made sure all the floors didn't change. The contrast was always the same on the floor so that people who were walking around would be able to continue walking, and they wouldn't stop, and we reduced the risk of falls. Okay. The sixth sign is new problems with words in speaking or writing. So you guys can all vouch for me that when I get older, I sometimes when I'm doing presentations stumble over my words. I've been doing pretty good right now, but you'll probably catch me before I'm done. I sometimes stumble over my words, or it takes me a second to find a word. That's normal for me. Okay, in my 30s, that's normal. Now, when I start getting older, or when I am older, because I'm already old, when I am older, yeah, I say it's all up here. No. As we get older and having a harder time finding words. Now, if I'm doing a big presentation like this when I'm in my 80s and I'm stumbling over my words, you can all say, well, Kelly was like that. We knew her back then. If I have not had problems doing that, and all of a sudden I'm having significant challenges in finding the right words, following a conversation, okay, putting together complete sentences, or finding the words to make the sentences complete, those are significant changes that are occurring. I work with a lady, the same lady I was telling you about, who I went into her home and she had Post-its all over. She herself was a PhD. She got her PhD. And her family started noticing changes when she sent emails. So she was still working. And she sent an email to all of her research students, and the email made no sense at all. And, said things like, up in the attic, we're going to, do this neurological evaluation on this, subject when the mice come in. And, some of her students came back to her and said, did you mean, is this a joke? They really thought that it was a joke, and she read it and she was mortified to think that she had written that email that way. But it made no sense, okay? So again, it's new challenges, okay? If you've been having a hard time finding words your whole life, it may be related to something else, not necessarily to a dementia or a cognitive change.
What about don't remember the names? You talk about somebody, but you can't say the name. You don't know who it, you know who it is, but I can't. Then I tell my husband, I tell him all around, well, she lives there, she does, and then he tells me.
Yeah. So that's normal, okay? Those kinds of changes are normal. I meet hundreds of people a day some days, and somebody will come up to me and they'll be like, oh, hi, Kelly, it's so great to see you. And I'm like, oh, hi, it's good to see you too. And I'll even have to ask them to put it into context for me and I'm kind of embarrassed because they're like, you work at the Alzheimer's Association. I'm like, I know. No, but putting it in context for me, I am able to recall things that help me to place where I met that person. If you can't remember the name, you don't remember where you met them, and you've met them a few times, that might be a sign that there's something going on. But if you've met them only a few times and you can't even remember, like you're talking about where you saw them or, where you met them or things that you talked about, that might be a concern. Okay. A while back we used to use the analogy that you can lose your keys, okay? But if once you find them, you don't know what to do with them, that's when there's something to worry about. Which leads me to number 7, which is misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace the steps. So after I went grocery shopping the other day and I brought in all the groceries, I couldn't find my keys. And I couldn't find my keys for a few days. Thank goodness I hit the extra set. And I didn't find them until I went to open the gallon of milk, and they were behind the gallon of milk in the refrigerator. Now, if you walked in my house and you saw my keys behind the gallon of milk in the refrigerator, you'd say something's wrong with Kelly. Until I told you that I put the groceries away and I had my keys hanging on my finger, and that's where they landed when I went in. Okay? So, you were talking about, remembering or trying to recall a person's name, and you go through all these steps to try to find them. People who are experiencing changes in cognition can't retrace those steps. They can't think back to a day ago, or they have difficulty recalling things that happened recently. So retracing the steps is very difficult. Okay? They may remember something that happened a year ago, or 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, but what they had for dinner last night may be very difficult for them to recall. The 8th warning sign is decreased or poor judgment. Okay? I actually know that they're doing a lot of scam prevention type of presentations in Green Valley. I attended one the other day, and I think it's wonderful. But individuals who are experiencing changes in cognition may attend one of those scam prevention workshops and still fall victim to the exact same thing that they tell you to say no to and hang up the phone on because of the changes in cognition. So, true story. I work with a financial advisor up in Tucson, and her father was a millionaire, and he got a call from the Jamaican lottery. And they called him and said, if you send us $1 million, we will send you your $10 million lottery winnings. So he went and wired the $1 million to the Jamaican lottery, and then called his daughter and said, I'm going to be getting $10 million in the mail. And that was all of his assets. He had wiped out his entire savings. And, you think that because she was a financial planner, okay, or because he was very well educated, that they would not have fallen victim to something so obvious that we're all aware of. His brain, because of the changes in his brain, because of his Alzheimer's disease, he did not recognize the danger in that. Okay. Someone who watches the QVC channel and all of a sudden has the whole entire collection of African masks in boxes in their living room. Okay. Now, if you've been collecting African masks your whole life, that's great. Okay. But if it's that irrational spending or spending things, spending money irrationally, okay, and then getting the boxes and letting them sit in the living room and never being opened. Withdrawal from work or social activities. You guys are all wonderfully connected. I love to hear at the end of your meetings, because you're talking about how you were doing things the other night at dinner together, and who's going to be the greeters on Sunday morning, and you're all very connected. If all of a sudden somebody from this particular group isn't showing up, there could be something going on. And you call and you say, are you doing okay? And they say, oh yeah, I'm doing just fine. Just been, things have been a little rough lately, but I'll be back to church. And then 2 weeks later, they're still not there. It might indicate that it's time for a visit. And this is one of the things that I missed with my grandmother. She used to be very active in a church back east. And she used to go out to lunch with the ladies on Wednesday afternoons. And when I was starting to visit her, she wasn't doing any of that. And I would say, well, Grandma, why aren't we going to church? Oh, I'm just not feeling up to it today. Because her world was shrinking to the point that she just really wanted to be in her home. That was the only place that she was starting to feel safe. She couldn't keep up with the sermon at church, so it was just easier to stay home. Okay, she'd go out to lunch with the ladies, and going back to the menu, she couldn't decide what she wanted. So she decided it was just better to stay at home because she didn't want to feel bad about her choices. The 10th warning sign is changes in mood and personality. Now, I've worked with people who have all of a sudden become very brisk and short. Now, if they've been very brisk and short their whole life, that's not a sign that something's wrong. But imagine one day you wake up and you don't know where you are, you don't know why you're there, and you don't know how you got there. It doesn't feel real good. Okay? So part of the changes that are occurring in the brain also cause depression, anxiety, okay, frustration with my grandmother not going out to church. She started to withdraw, okay, and she started to become not so nice to me. And I was the favorite grandchild, okay. So, you know, seeing those changes, somebody who is suddenly very, doesn't answer your questions the same way or walks away from you. I've also seen it work the other way. Someone who has historically been very mean and tough becomes very kind and wants to come over for lunch. Okay? So drastic personality changes are changes in mood. Okay? So what do you do if you see these signs? What do you do if you are talking to someone and you're seeing some of these signs with them? The first thing to do is to talk about it, because they may not recognize it. Okay? I know my grandmother didn't. Even when she put the cat food in the refrigerator, you know, and I would say, Grandma, why is the cat food in the refrigerator? Oh, I didn't mean to do that, and she took it out. Okay? But it never caught on to me that I should probably address why the cat food was in the refrigerator the second time. Okay? So we just ignored it, and we pretended like nothing was happening. And then when I started talking to her friends at church, and told her that she had fallen, and they're like, oh yeah, you know, she couldn't, you know, we had her over for lunch on Wednesday, and she just kind of withdrew and wasn't talking to anybody while she was here. And I was like, well, why didn't you say something? You know, why did you ignore it? Oh, well, we just thought she wasn't feeling well. Well, the first part of it is you got to talk about it, okay? Then the second part is to go to the doctor, okay? It is really important to go to the doctor to rule out those things that can be reversed, okay? Is it a medication interaction? Is there an infection that's going on? You know, is there, are you drinking too much alcohol? Okay? Maybe you're taking an over-the-counter medication that's interfering with your prescription drugs. Those are all important things to address with the doctor. You can rule them out and they go away. You can treat them, okay? If it's not, he may refer you to a neurologist or to a neuropsychologist, okay? Or to someone who specializes in Alzheimer's disease to do some testing, okay? But again, that first step is talking about it. So the other big question that I often get asked is, Kelly, what can I do to prevent it? Okay? So unfortunately, this disease is incurable. There are some medications that are on the market today to help treat some of the symptoms associated with Alzheimer's disease, but there is no cure, and there is no way to prevent it. There are things you can do to reduce your risk. Okay, so I'm going to get on my doctor's soapbox. Okay, green leafy vegetables, lots of vegetables. Okay, don't eat fried foods. Reducing your risk of chronic disease. Okay, because when we talk about a vascular dementia, we talk about heart disease and hypertension and diabetes. So if you're taking care of your brain the same way that you take care of your body, it does reduce your risk. Exercising. Okay, everybody in here can exercise. Okay, can't tell you how many times I've heard of somebody say, well, I'm too old to exercise. Well, that's not true, because I've seen Sit and Be Fit. I've seen Silver Sneakers, you know, and they want to adapt things to make it appropriate for you. If you're smoking, stop smoking. If you're drinking, reduce the amount of alcohol that you're drinking. Okay, but again, there's a lot of research going on diet. Okay, it does help to reduce your risk when you're eating right. Okay, but again, the biggest thing is to talk about it, and if you are, or if you know someone who is showing any of these signs or symptoms, to encourage them to go to the doctor and maybe go with them. Or you can call us. Our office has a 24-hour helpline. We have people that call us just to say, you know, Kelly, I heard your 10 signs presentation the other day and I'm worried about my own memory. Where do I go from here? All the way to, I have been caring for someone with Alzheimer's disease for 3 years and I'm at my wit's end. What do I do next? We do have a number of different programs that we provide for free to the community.